Hi, this is Adam from Game Watcher, and this is our review of Crowntakers. Crowntakers is awesome. Absolutely awesome at kicking my ass, frustrating the hell out of me, leaving me cold, lonely and broken, only for my foolish self to run straight back into this toxic relationship. Now, that's not toxic because Crowntakers is inherently bad, oh no. This turn-based RPG has its claws so deep into me that despite a few niggles, it's poisoning my time stream with an abyss usually reserved for such high-impact titles like Dragon Age or The Witcher. Now let me explain. Crowntakers is an isometric viewpoint roguelike RPG with a terribly corny story about freeing your father from the prison of an evil lord thingammy-jiggamy thing. Now you're probably stopping right there because isometric viewpoint roguelike RPG, those are all bullet points to actually fire someone in the head with, but just hold it right there because there are still reasons to really look at this game and enjoy it. Those reasons, bizarrely, are why you will die within the first 5 minutes of starting a new game. So what do I mean by that? Well, on easy mode, normal is only locked until much later in the game. Each time you die in Crowntakers, your experience is carried over to the next character and you start again. Not only does your level carry over, but also the level of any mercenaries you recruited on the previous runs, and each death becomes a progression in a way, allowing you to level up more before you reached your previous point, although the weapons, armour and items that you gathered and upgraded in the previous run are reset every time. So what type of game is Crowntakers? Well, it's a basic RPG with a world map where you progress through each level, stopping off at caves and villages here and there to acquire items, and as you do so, you risk random events happening to you. You can go to inns for recruiting certain mercenaries. You are allowed to recruit one for each game level if you have the coin to afford it. You can do some item shopping and rest if you like to restore some HP. Blacksmiths are there, enabling you to upgrade weapons and armour with runes, metals and leather. I mean, this is all very predictable and very basic as you wander from point to point, and Crowntakers allows very little variation or depth to this, sometimes giving you the option of going further into a dark cave maybe, or choosing to feed or kill giant snails, which is really odd, but it's what it does. And the results of these choices are pretty much random, with the chance of something terrible happening slightly less than those of collecting some decent loot. So that's the overworld map, and you progress through these levels, which get increasingly more difficult and take on different locations as you seek to free your father from an underground dungeon. Once you're in battle though, Crowntakers takes the sort of random element and basic nature of its game just a little bit too far and spreads your team and enemies in a pretty much unfair manner. Now, some mercenaries you recruit are going to be archers, which are good at long range but are really squishy when they're close up, and spawns them surrounded by enemies sometimes, and that's just not fair. It's not challenging, it's not difficult, it's just unfair. Now, some might argue that's the point of a challenge, but having no say in the position of your team at the beginning of each battle is one arse kicking too far for this reviewer. Now, that said, I did find the rest of the battle mechanics pretty satisfying. I mean, they are quite simple, but they're easy to grasp and quick to play, which really is one of Crowntakers' best points, and that's how quick you can get through a game. With the hexagonal layout, you'll want to get around the back of enemies as much as possible to deliver the all-important critical blows or backstabbings. Now, attacks of opportunity are also the really important part of this battle system, and they can happen for both sides when you bunch characters together. Now, when you do that, it leads to a free attack on any other character, and invariably that turns the tide of battle because you can pretty much double your attack numbers if you get into the right situation. Now, this is really awesome when it works with you, and when you win a battle, it's really satisfying. Unfortunately, it can be devastating when it goes against you and feel just a tiny bit unfair, but once you get the hang of it, and after a few run-throughs you'll begin to get the right kind of tactical sense you need to enable you to survive. Key to it really is keeping to the edges of the map to ensure you aren't backstabbed. Just stick to that basic strategy and try and bunch your characters up as much as possible, and you'll do pretty well. Controller support is present and correct, but you'll have a much better time using the mouse, as it's difficult to hover over items and weapons to see what they are with the controller interface. The game isn't visually taxing, although it's quite bright and colourful, so most laptops I imagine should run it quite fine and dandy. The random aspect of the game is really what keeps it fresh, and levels are generated randomly, making each playthrough just a little bit different and just enough to keep it fresh. The random generated effects also extend to certain items and events, and these can sometimes get quite frustrating when it works against you, but as you play and figure it out, you'll get to figure out how risky eating tainted meat or magic mushrooms really are, and you know, it is called tainted meat for a reason, so there you go. Initially, you also have very little health, meaning that most encounters can be fatal in the beginning, and boss battles at the end of each section are usually, in the early days, massive disasters. But this is the crux of Crowntakers. It's built on repetition. And that repetition isn't tedious because each run through of the game can last anything from, say, 5 minutes to half an hour if you're on a really good run. So not much time at all. And levelling up a few times gives you much better stats that you can then carry on to your next playthrough, and it all works in your favour in the end, leaving a game that's best played in short bursts, but does have the complexity to keep you going for several hours at a time if you really get into it. And aside from balancing the random elements of the game to make them a little less unfair, Crowntakers is a superbly focused effort that can be enjoyed in short bursts or gorged on for multiple hour sessions. It's likely to be better consumed sparingly, much like a good port, but it has the complexity greater than it initially appears. And as a relief from overly serious epic games about dragons and ages and Frenchmen and stabbing things, it's pretty much a welcome diversion. I've scored this a solid 7.5 out of 10, and it's available for both PC and Mac on Steam, so check it out there.